Welcome, everyone. My name is Emily Arrowsmith, and I'm the Director of Research and Programs at the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum. And I'm happy to welcome you to this webinar today. Thank you for joining. The Canadian Apprenticeship Forum, for those who don't know, is a nonprofit organization, and we connect Canada's apprenticeship community. And we have a commitment to diversity and inclusion. In keeping with Indigenous protocol and building respectful relationships between Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples in Canada, it's customary to acknowledge the traditional territory or ancestral lands of Indigenous peoples. We are meeting virtually today, so I would like to acknowledge that Indigenous peoples are the traditional stewards of the land and waters where each of us attend this afternoon. The Canadian Apprenticeship Forum recognizes the Indigenous landscape of Canada is broad and encompasses many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Further, we respect and affirm the inherent and treaty rights of all Indigenous peoples across Turtle Island. And we would like to invite you to identify your intentions to disrupt and dismantle colonialism beyond this territorial acknowledgement. Before we get started, just a few housekeeping items. To ensure an enjoyable experience for everyone and to reduce the background noise, attendees have been muted and videos have been turned off. But if you have any questions or comments during the webinar, please put them in the chat function, and then I can ask the speakers to answer them at the end of the PowerPoint presentation. If we are unable to answer the question during the live session, we will try and follow up with you and get you an answer to your question. We will be sharing a recording of this presentation, and we will be sharing the PowerPoint as well if you would like it. So we will be sharing a recording and the presentation. Now I'm really excited to introduce Jana George, who is the Manager of Research and Policy Development, and Nessa Nampian, the Research Assistant from Cisco Consulting. And the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum has been working with Cisco over the past couple of years, along with a project advisory committee. And we've been working together to develop a framework that will help us document wise practices and support the retention of Indigenous people in the skilled trades. So now I'd like to pass it over to Jana and Nessa to share with you some of the findings from the work we did with the Project Advisory Committee.
Okay, thank you so much, Emily. And thank you to all the attendees for participating today. Nisa and I are very excited to share some of the background as well as the work and findings from our engagements to support this project. As Emily mentioned, we did a lot of work over the past few months to engage different program administrators, tradespeople, knowledge holders to help develop a framework for supporting retention of Indigenous peoples in the skilled trades. So in terms of our presentation, we'll start off by introducing our team, Cisco, as well as ourselves, and then we'll provide a brief purpose overview, so why the project came to be and how we approached the work and the methodology we took. We'll also share the report outline and share some of the information focusing on mainly part 2 and part 3, so the findings that we gathered through the research and engagements, as well as the framework and the proposed actions and outcomes that we've identified. Okay, so a bit about our team. So we do go by Cisco for short, but we are Cisco and Associates Consulting Services, Inc., and we're an international social impact firm for equity denied, marginalized, and oppressed communities. So our team includes employees and subcontractors representing the communities that we serve, including First Nation, Métis, and settler allied professionals with a diversity of specializations and a common strength in working with and for the communities that we serve, using respectful community-based approaches, as well as Indigenous decolonizing and participatory methodologies. So we currently have a roster of 8 employees on staff and about 10 associates that we work with on a regular basis who have different specializations in a diversity of areas. And we've also worked with over 200 Indigenous communities across Canada, as well as in Chile and in Australia too. So to formally introduce myself, my name is Jana George. As Emily mentioned, I'm the Manager of Research and Policy Development with Cisco and Associates. I live and work remotely from Kettle and Stony Point First Nation, situated on Lake Huron in Southern Ontario. I've been with Cisco since 2016 when I joined as a youth co-representative for my home community, and then joined full-time when I finished up my studies in 2020. So I've worked in various capacities and have really enjoyed supporting this work specifically, so excited to share more about the framework. And with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague Nisa to introduce herself.
Ani Baju, Nisa Maben Dusnikas, Amjanong Dondaba. Hello, my name is Nisa Maben. I am from Amjanong First Nation, and I'm the Research Assistant and Communications Lead with Cisco. Very similar to Jana, I started off as a co-researcher with Cisco and quickly was hired full-time and have been working with Cisco for about a year and a half now. I also live and work remotely from Sarnia, Ontario, which is very close to my home community, Amjanong. And I'm also a member of the Amjanong Youth Council, and I have sat on the education committee for the past 2.5 years. I'm going to move on to the purpose of today's webinar, and this is to share back the final report and inclusion framework created to highlight the success of and to support and retain Indigenous peoples in the trades, including Métis citizens, Inuit, and First Nations people. The framework reflects Indigenous peoples' living experiences and considers both individual and community well-being, promotes pre-apprenticeship skills for individual employment that also benefit families and communities, and creates a community of support composed of Indigenous elders and community leaders, as well as employers, trade unions, and colleges as well. In a little background, in 2023, the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum hired our team at Cisco to undertake engagement and research to inform the development of this inclusion framework for success to support and retain Indigenous peoples in the trades, including Métis citizens, Inuit, and First Nations people. And with this approach, we had extensive outreach that was undertaken by the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum and Cisco to First Nations, Métis, and Inuit organizations across the country, including the Indigenous Skills and Employment Training Programs, also known as ISET. Additionally, the interview guides were translated into Inuktitut and French to increase participation and ensure accessibility. And throughout our approach, we were able to engage 77 participants, including elders and knowledge holders, Indigenous tradespeople, and both settler and Indigenous skilled trade program administrators as well. And you can see the demographics and the participation by type through these tables here. And then also how many individuals we interview by region as well. With that, I'll pass over to Jana.
Hey, thank you, Nisa. So in terms of the report outline, we've divided it into 3 main parts. So part 1 provides an overview of holistic and inclusive training frameworks for Indigenous peoples, their network of supports, and helps to identify some barriers and best practices. So for part 1, this is mainly like background information. So we did a lot of research looking at other frameworks that exist, trying to identify if there was common pain points that were experienced or challenges, as well as what was really working well to help kind of inform our conversations and engagements, as well as to reflect in the framework. For the purpose of today's presentation and webinar, we will be focusing on parts 2 and 3. So part 2 summarizes the key findings drawn from the research and engagement process. So again, the various focus groups and interviews we held with different participants. So sharing some of their best practices, as well as highlighting common themes across their lived experiences. And then finally, part 3 presents the inclusion framework. So we'll kind of walk through the different milestones that includes and show how we align the findings to reflect that within the framework with the hopes of fostering success and retention. Okay, so again, part one, background. We're not going to go in depth for this one, but we did highlight some various models and frameworks that were really working well. So some were within Canada, some were global, but we just took a look at what kind of cool and innovative ideas were helping to support success within retainment for the skilled trades. We also looked at what their networks of supports look like and helped to identify best and wise practices that we could reflect in this framework. Okay, so part two, findings. So again, this summarizes the findings from each group of participants. So we did engage knowledge holders, program administrators, and tradespeople. So there was some kind of overlap, noting that some people move through all of those different kind of spaces within their experiences, but we tried to separate out the groups as well to highlight the different findings. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Nisa, and she's going to start walking us through some of those main findings.
Perfect. So the first group that I'm going to be sharing back on are the knowledge holders that we engaged. So we were able to engage with 4 knowledge holders, all identifying as First Nation, living within Central Canada. And when knowledge holders were asked about how trades programming can be designed with Indigenous people in mind, the majority shared that Indigenous trainers and mentorship opportunities would best support learners. They also explain that experimental learning alongside others who share living experiences and similar worldviews, including a relation to lifelong learning, is also helpful. And they recommended that training programs are adapted to reflect both individual and community needs, are accessible within Indigenous communities, incorporate healing and generational aspects of Indigenous cultures, are offered in land-based settings, and are transferable to future generations. The graphic you see here summarizes the importance of approaching programming to meet the individual needs through mentorship, accessibility, and program supports, as well as fostering cultural awareness through land-based teachings, providing cultural awareness and sensitivity training, and also working closely with local Indigenous communities. Another session of our engagement was asking the knowledge holders what recommendations they had for how success could be defined or measured. And they shared recommendations in 3 different areas, which included individually, culturally, as well as how success can be enhanced. So self-defining success overall looks like individuals developing their own goals, and also measuring that against their personal success, identifying individual strengths and personal improvements. And when it comes to looking at culturally informed ways to measure success, the largest one that came through these engagements was relationship building, whether that be through sharing circles, regular check-ins, understanding individual work and home life balance, and providing that ongoing support and encouragement of using essential skills in everyday life. And lastly, supports to enhance success look like having Indigenous liaisons, program awareness and promotion, highlighting the benefits of entering the trades, offering subsidies to alleviate any financial stress, celebrating personal success along the trades journey, and stronger advocating for women in the trades as well.
Nisa, are you able to zoom out just a pinch? The bottom line of the slide is being cut off right now.
Let's see. I don't know how to zoom it.
I believe that is better.
Let me see here. Is that better?
It's still being cut off a pinch at the bottom. A little bit more. Apologies, everyone. That zoomed in. Perfect.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, I believe that's okay. If anyone is still unable to see it, just let us know in the chat. Sorry about that, Nisa.
Thank you. All right, I will invite you to share back on what we heard from tradespeople.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so as Nisa mentioned, we did engage 3 separate groups. So for the next couple of slides, I'll highlight some of the key findings that we heard from tradespeople we had the opportunity to engage with. So the slide you see here highlights the interview participants. In the focus groups, we did have quite large groups. And again, there was some overlap in roles, so we didn't have those separated out. However, we did do a total of 7 interviews with tradespeople specifically across Canada who shared about their living experience working in the trades. Majority of these tradespeople were First Nation, and one was Métis and one was Inuk. And at least one person from each region across Canada provided their input. However, most participants were living within central Canada. So each trade person did have a different set of skills, and most were working in different skilled trades. And additionally, 3 participants did have their certificate of qualification, and most shared that they received their skills training and education through a college, and the others received their training through a trade school or trades program. Okay, so we would like to highlight some of the common barriers and challenges that tradespeople identified. So overall, through the engagement process, we heard that accessibility was the most common challenge that participants faced. So this included having to travel long distances to attend training and not having access to reliable transportation to attend or travel to the program that they wanted to participate in. Some of the other barriers identified included insecure income during the training period, as well as several folks experienced racism within the training program or within the employment setting. And there was a few mentions of a lack of focus and knowledge on the fundamentals of the skilled trade within the programs. We also heard there was limited training or focus on lifting and safety measures, which was brought up by several participants. And finally, a common challenge was finding accessible employment post-training. So for those folks who didn't have things like transportation or certain skills, there were some common challenges in securing that post-training. And in turn, we also heard some program supports that participants recommended could help to enhance the programs. So there were a few that came out as kind of key themes. One was being assistance with program costs. So whether this could be through subsidies to purchase work clothes or boots, any tools. We also heard living and food allowances would be helpful. So again, for those financial costs that either could deter or impede someone's ability to complete the training program, offsetting those costs would be a major help. We also heard that extra tutoring and one-on-one support would be really valuable. So we heard commonly a personalized one-on-one approach is definitely helpful, whether that's through mentorship or tutoring. It could just be a support for someone to talk through some of the challenges they're facing, but that was recommended as a way to enhance the programming. And participants also shared that they wish they had access to some additional supports. These weren't as common, but a few folks did bring them up. So things like childcare, so assisting them in securing childcare while they're attending the programs was a big thing, especially for those who have family obligations. Mentorship was identified again, specifically for women entering the trades. And then offering transportation and programs in Indigenous communities was also recommended. So reducing a lot of those different barriers at once, including transportation, overall accessibility. It might be easier to have childcare in their home communities, and also just reducing some of the discomfort of having to travel to urban settings if they're far from that, and overall accessibility. And finally, some of the different interview participants highlighted ways to help measure success and ways that that could be culturally safe for Indigenous peoples. The first was having personalized goals. So helping to ensure that individuals set and define their personal goals, in addition to things like program completion, upgrade, training, certification, and secured employment. So we did hear time and time again, success varies depending on the individual. So what success may look like to one folk could be completely different to another. So as long as they're progressing and working towards their personal goals, they may be on track to reach their level of success. So helping them to set those goals. We also heard that for measuring success, it's really important to recognize improvement in soft skills. So things like consistent attendance, overall communications, and commitment to the program. We also heard that enhancing skills and confidence using tools in the workplace and feeling confident entering their employment is really helpful. And finally, recruitment and retention. So we heard that highlighting success and completing consistent follow-ups would be really beneficial. So finding opportunities either through recognition or celebrations to celebrate folks who complete the program and their different skill development and milestones would be really helpful in boosting confidence, overall commitment to the program, and help to highlight that, and also help to make others across the Indigenous communities aware of the success that's occurring as well. And finally, the follow-ups. So providing consistent follow-ups with individuals to help encourage ongoing training and pursuing employment opportunities. So just those regular check-ins to let them know, even though they're done their training program, they're still on the radar. There's assistance in obtaining that employment or upskilling, whatever their needs may be. And with that, I'll hand it over to Nisa to cover the program administrators.
Lovely, thanks, Jana. So overall, we were able to engage a total of 66 program administrators who provided input through online interviews and focus group discussions. The majority of program administrator participants are Indigenous and all serve Indigenous people and communities across Canada. Those who participated represented a large variety of trades programs from pre-employment to Red Seal. They also delivered training and recruitment program partnerships, apprenticeship programs, pre-apprenticeship programs, and pre-trades, and reported offering pre-employment support, trade promotion introductory programs, Red Seal trades programming and supports, and trade programs for women as well. And you can see here in the table I've highlighted the number of organizations that offered these programs. And the majority of program administrators who participated said they provided skills for success training about reading, writing, numeracy, and communication. And the program administrators who did not provide skills for success training were those that mainly focused on secondary school upgrading within their work. And program administrators employ similar approaches in supporting Indigenous participants within their programs. One of the main approaches that was shared across the program administrators was using a student-centered approach that includes providing individual wraparound supports. And they also shared multiple ways they strive to build and strengthen relationships within their programs as well. So these supports look like collaborating at every stage of the tradesperson's journey, discussing their individual needs, providing holistic and trauma-informed practices, incorporating culture within the training and program, providing more training opportunities directly within communities to address those accessibility barriers, and focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And when it comes to building relationships, focusing on building trust with participants and employers, having an Indigenous liaison, mentor, or job coach available is also recommended, and offering individual supports and resources when needed, including acknowledging and addressing client needs beyond the program as well. And lastly, checking in and following up with individuals regularly. So these are all different ways that we can build those relationships within the programs. And when it comes to program improvements, program administrators identified 4 different areas that look like support and resources, and in terms of increasing funding to expand supports, such as hiring Indigenous instructors or providing housing and childcare, hiring more Indigenous tutors and mentors and having those available, advertising Indigenous trade programs across community high schools, and ensuring that the approach is appropriate and culturally safe. Second is the living experience, so addressing program accessibility barriers, including examples of success among Indigenous peoples in the training materials as well, providing culturally safety training for administrators and employers, and incorporating traditional teachings from knowledge holders as well. And when it comes to relationship building, offering an employee assistance program, embedding cultural and trauma-informed training for administrators and employers, including more cultural elements into the program, including storytelling, and offering those elder supports as well. And lastly, program improvements within learning models include looking at hands-on models for learning, responding to any of those language barriers, providing academic support such as reading tools, laptops, and incorporating Indigenous ways of knowing within the trades as well. And last, we have measuring success. So the program administrators provided 8 different areas to measure success through training programs. While some of these measures are currently in place, the student-centered approach will be a great way to measure against those personalized goals. So the first one we have here is looking at a student's self-improvement. Second, we have program completion. Third, we have their ability to secure employment. And fourth, we have contributions, their families and communities. So recognizing the skills that they're bringing back to their communities and sharing with their communities, whether that be through training, whether that be through employment. Number 5 is demonstrating their skills. So measuring success based on how well they've improved in terms of skills. And then number 6 is how many relationships they've built amongst their peers or amongst their employers. And 7, we have self-assessments of achievements against their personal goals. So making sure that those self-assessments are taking place and are happening and are measuring against their own personal self-improvement. And then last is number of attempts a student has made at completing a program as well. And I think that student-centered approach and recognizing and understanding an individual's personal goals from the start is what's really going to help understand and measure against these 8 key areas. And last, successful retainment measures. So program administrators shared that while hiring and retaining students within skilled trade programs, it is challenging. Relationship building with employment partners is very helpful, and that engaging former students as program administrators can help with staff retention challenges, and also recommended leveraging social media, hosting career fairs, and providing tours to raise awareness about the trades in Indigenous communities is also another way to promote retainment for Indigenous tradespeople. With that, I'm going to invite Janet to share on our proposed framework.
Okay, thank you, Nisa. So moving into the final section that we're going to cover, the report includes part 3, the framework. So again, this presents the inclusion framework for success to support and retain Indigenous peoples in the trades, including Métis citizens, Inuit, and First Nations people. And again, we developed the framework based on our engagement results, the key findings that we're seeing, as well as the best and wise practices we identified through the various document scans that we can completed. And again, we also worked with the committee, so checking in at different junctures of the project to make sure it was in alignment. Okay, so this is a graphic overview of the framework or the roadmap to success. And the framework provides a roadmap to support a successful journey for Indigenous peoples from pre-apprenticeship, apprenticeship, and trades careers. Training organizations can use this as a guide to help support success among Indigenous people. And it includes 4 key milestones. So the first is awareness, and this focuses on inspiring Indigenous people to pursue a career in the trades. So again, creating more education and awareness on the various career paths that exist and helping folks to identify how they can achieve those careers. So different programs available in close proximity to them, different resources that can support them, and things like that. The second milestone is engagement, and this focuses on creating ways to increase Indigenous cultural inclusion and community participation. And then the third milestone is supports and resources. So this focuses on the provisions to meet participant needs and helping to encourage individual success for participants. And then fourth is retention. So the fourth focuses on providing opportunities to grow within a chosen trades career that is aligned with the individual goals and to increase Indigenous retention within the trades as well. Okay, so each section of the framework has an action item as well as a list of intended outcomes that program administrators can use as a guide to help support success. So the first milestone, awareness, is focused on developing awareness and recruitment strategies designed and implemented to increase cultural awareness among program administrators and to help promote trades opportunities to Indigenous peoples. And within this table, the actions are focused on inspiring Indigenous youth to explore the trades, as well as developing mandatory cultural protocols and training for program administrators, and then also increasing program awareness and employment opportunities. And then the outcomes of these actions include increasing overall awareness of programs and career opportunities, and increasing the supports and awareness to address microaggressions and racism that are experienced within the workplace. And within the framework, we've also embedded a few best practices that readers can refer to and look into for more information on some of the wise practices that are in alignment and that are successful. So for this specific milestone, we included 2. One is the Skilled Trades BC, which is a program offering grades 10 to 12 students an opportunity to explore trade sampler programs. And then we also highlighted Skills Canada, a welding camp called Mind Over Metal, and this is delivered to youth ages 12 to 17. So again, creating awareness, sparking some interest in the trades careers. Okay, and the second milestone is engagement. So this focuses on enhancing cultural inclusion and community engagement through trades programming, economic development, and the workforce market. So the actions within this milestone are focused on fostering relationship building, as well as training and hiring Indigenous liaisons. So again, we heard over and over, personalized approaches, having culturally safe mentors available would be really helpful and help to enhance overall success and retainment. We also have incorporating cultural teachings into the program, so making the programming really relevant and accessible for the participants. And then finally, delivering programs within Indigenous communities. So we heard this is a really good way of addressing a lot of accessibility barriers, so helping to get more people into their training programs. And the outcomes within this milestone include things like increased business partnerships and employment opportunities, as well as increased student engagement and overall success based on their personalized goals. And then we also have enhanced connection to culture for those pursuing different training programs, as well as careers within the skilled trades, and overall increased accessibility. And with that, I'll hand it over to Nisa to walk through the next 2 milestones.
Perfect. So the third milestone focuses on supports and resources. And provide supports and resources to meet the individual needs of Indigenous tradespeople. And the action items associated with this milestone are focused on developing income support programs, promoting individual goal setting, and providing those culturally based evaluations, strengthening learner support systems through continuous check-ins and encouragement, offering training in communities, and providing mentorships for women in the trades. And the outcomes in this section include overall reduced financial stress, increased confidence in skills and mental well-being, enhanced accessibility, and lastly, increased female representation within the trades. This is just an ongoing slide. And lastly, we have retention. So the purpose of this milestone is to increase retention by providing multiple levels of employment opportunities for Indigenous people working in the trades. And the actions in this section are focused on post-program follow-ups, increased accessible connections to employment, relocation planning, intentional recruitment through relationship building, programming for women in the trades, and the associated outcomes include increased retention of Indigenous tradespeople overall, increased resources to pursue employment opportunities, and lastly, increased skills, ability, and confidence among women in the trades. So to summarize the 4 areas, awareness, engagement, supports and resources, and retention. And this concludes our presentation and what we heard from our engagements. We hope that you can use this framework to help support and retain Indigenous tradespeople within your programs, whether that be through awareness, engagement, providing those supports, and retention. So with that, I'll hand it back to Emily.
Thank you so much. That was a great synthesis of all the collective knowledge and the wise practices that people have identified through all their amazing initiatives that they have from across Canada. So we have some questions. Did anybody that you talked to during the interview or consultation process, did they talk about the need for a culturally informed assessment? So usually apprentices get assessed through a test. Maybe it's a multiple choice test. Did anyone talk about the need for a culturally informed assessment, like that more focuses maybe on demonstration of skills or demonstrating skills in a way that would help the community?
Yes, I did hear that multiple times, and I think that would vary based on what region in Canada they're living in as well. That definitely came up when I was speaking with program administrators about the challenges they face with measuring and assessing Indigenous tradespeople within the Northern Territories. They really have to adjust. They really have to change their approach to meet the needs of each individual. And it was definitely mentioned and highlighted as something that needs to be put in place.
Can you give any examples of land-based training? How might you connect to an electrical program within the college system?
So a really good example that I heard from somebody that I interviewed is that within their welding program, teaching that they have is associated with fire. So they incorporate like the importance and the power of using fire and why it's so important in Indigenous culture. So they incorporate that on the land to kind of make those connections and to also provide those cultural teachings to the individuals in their training programs.
And during the consultations, did anybody talk about who should potentially be responsible or accountable for the implementation of this type of framework the resourcing, both financial and human resources, would be a critical component for the successful implementation of the framework.
Okay, I think that was kind of long. Can you maybe summarize?
Yeah, like who do you think, did anyone during the consultations talk about who would be responsible or accountable for like resourcing this? I'm assuming people said government.
Yeah, no, that wasn't really mentioned throughout the engagements.
Okay. The report is going to be available on the website. We're just finalizing it, and then we have to get it translated and graphically designed, but it will be available on the website for sure. I love how your team completed this work to define and measure success for Indigenous people. This is super helpful even outside of the trades industry, especially as a nonprofit organization that's funding and supporting our people who seek assistance in achieving their career goals. That's a really good point. Yeah. Unfortunately, our funders have systems that track success based on non-soft skills and find this way more in alignment with what we're working towards. Thank you for this amazing work. Yeah, awesome. That's exactly what we were trying to do, wasn't it, Nessa? Trying to get away from maybe government-defined measures of success and what do Indigenous peoples across Canada think the measures of success should be.
Yes.
Good documentation here identifies the student apprentice challenge. Another interesting point, you know, a person who's experiencing racism on the job site and can maybe help the apprentice is really critical, because if a complaint is given to a non-Indigenous supervisor, sometimes it can be hard to trust the process unless the company adopts compliant processes that actually have like teeth. Excellent comment. I think that definitely came up during our consultation, that Indigenous instructors, Indigenous mentors, even when you're doing the attraction activities and try a trade, there needs to be Indigenous tradespeople involved with the attraction and the retention.
Yes. I think that's why it's so important to have those follow-ups in place and to like encourage those employment opportunities for people who are even far along their trades journey.
Yeah, did any of the people you talked to have any ideas that they shared with you around Indigenous worldviews, which there would be several different approaches to that, because there's First Nation, Métis, and Inuit. And but taking those worldviews and then making the connection to the trades. So you mentioned the fire example. Did anybody talk about any additional examples?
Unfortunately, no. I didn't hear too many in-depth feedback based on, say, like the 7 grandfather teachings is a really good example that could be incorporated. But I didn't hear that. But I love that idea.
And some of the interviews I did when they were talking about worldviews and the differences that should be reflected, I heard a lot about removing like the personalization. So instead of personal goals, income, or just focusing on that individual success, including curriculum and supports to foster familial and community success. So for a lot of Indigenous communities, if they're not going to a specific union afterwards, it may not be counted towards that term of success. But if they're going to their home community and helping to build like lodges or giving back to the community with their skills, that would be a way of kind of embedding the community aspect within positioning how they could use their training and skills as well. That was one thing that came out of the interviews I did as well.
Great. How would the topic of colonialism, for example, be infused into the trades curriculum? Did anyone mention any ideas in regards to that?
I would say just when it came to measuring success. ultimately, like measuring it just through like program completion or certification. There was definitely a strong focus on like leaning away from measuring it that way and leaning towards more of like that relationship building piece and that support piece.
As well as in terms of how like recruitment and the program supports are in place. So we did hear from a few folks, like folks who are leaving their home community. It could be a fly-in or very remote. They may experience like a lot of additional stressors, such as culture shock if they're going to an urban center for their training. So just keeping those in mind and having safe spaces for them to access resources or supports and kind of mitigate those, knowing that that is a very real possibility for different participants.
Absolutely. Another good suggestion here. Did anyone talk, would an incentive maybe be a good idea for a journey person who's mentoring the Indigenous apprentice? Definitely, I think.
And I will say that was probably a contributing factor of our engagements, noting that a lot of tradespeople work very different and varying hours. It was hard to schedule times when they were available, so that may have also impacted, but appreciate everyone's comments on different resources we could look into for research.
I think a good thing would be to incorporate like a prior learning recognition or assessment into the trades to see what skills from elders or others can be reflected in the skills learned in the trades. Oh, good one. That's a great idea. How would you recommend employer success metrics different from like training providers? That's an interesting question. Like, did anyone talk about that? How employers maybe need to measure success differently too?
I can't think of any specifics that come to mind. I think I'm gonna have to highlight that relationship piece again. A lot of program administrators, well, I guess Indigenous program administrators said that it's really important for them to trust and build relationships with the people that they're partnering with, the employers that they're partnering with, in terms of like recruitment, really focusing on having those strong relationships and strong partnerships was highlighted as a big priority for them. Hope that provides some clarity.
Just another comment here. At the college I work at, we offer reserve seating for Indigenous students in a few of our trades program, and we'll have more in the future as a part of our Indigenization plan. We also have a program called Aboriginal Scholars, where we offer holistic support to our students, and we're hoping to rebrand this for the fall to include a more trade-specific type of support system for our students in the trades.
Wow, I love that.
Awesome, that's good. Our project advisory committee talked a lot about the importance of holistic support.
Yeah.
Somebody's raising a really good point about it is important to have like Indigenous tradespeople involved in, at technical training and on employer sites, but it can't just be based on that. There has to be like a culture at the organization that's supportive. Sometimes these issues can be very deep-seated, and you can't just do it based on someone's appearance. So good comment there.
So would that
Awesome.
would that look like having some training in place to ensure that the Indigenous liaison is, providing those culturally appropriate resources and supports? Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, thank you very much to Jana and Nessa for all your hard work on this, and to the project advisory committee who worked with us every step of the way to develop thoughtful questions They went over each of the actions and outcomes and really thought carefully about them and just provided a lot of best practices from across the country. So we really appreciate their support. And we will be translating this document and making it available on our website after we've designed it. So you will have access to the recording from today, the PowerPoint from today, and then just keep your eyes peeled on the Canadian Apprenticeship Forum Reports and Resources page, because the report will be showing up there as well. And I just wanted to let everybody know in closing that on October 23rd, we'll be having an in-person event where Jenna and Nessa will be sharing the research findings. We'll be having a panel of Indigenous tradespeople who will be sharing their experiences and their journey. And we will also be having a discussion. So we'll be talking all afternoon about solutions and ideas and recommendations about how we can better support Indigenous tradespeople. So if you'd like to join us, it's going to be at Algonquin College in October on the 23rd, and we'd love to have you participate in that with us. So thank you so much for joining today. We really appreciate it. And please keep your eyes peeled for the report. And once again, thank you so much to Jenna and Nessa for all their hard work on this project.